the 80s cop drama. I'm sort of amazed we don't see more nods to this style, in games in particular. The loose cannon cop who wants justice no matter what it takes, the furious commissioner with steam coming out of his ears, the girls and glory and occasional car chase. My guess is that the 80s cop flick led to more than one kid joining the police force, only to get a sudden rude awakening about the banal ins and outs of being your average, everyday guardian of the peace.
Yeah, but in all my times as a cop, I've never chased a guy across a crowded city square. I've never hung on to that part of the helicopter. You know that part underneath the thing where it lands? Do you know that part?
Yes, I know that part.
I've never hung on to that. I've never even commandeered a vehicle.
Now that sounds like a lot of fun.
And it's that humdrum, tickets and paperwork reality that brings us to Beat Cop. The first thing the developer Pixel Crow tells you during Beat Cop is that this police simulator is most definitely not meant to actually represent Brooklyn in the 80s. Instead, it's meant to be a tribute to those 80s cop shows that we all love so much. And while I'm not completely sold on that theme, I will say that Beat Cop is a genuinely engaging experience. If you've ever seen an old cop drama, you know the story. You play Jack Kelly, a former detective who's been framed by the powers that be for a crime he didn't commit. You're demoted to a run-of-the-mill beat cop and have 21 days to clear your name, all while handing out parking tickets, getting to know your block, and taking the occasional bribe. Interestingly enough, if Beat Cop reminded me of any game, it was Papers, Please. Not necessarily in the attitude and overall theme. Beat Cop is filled with crude humor that doesn't exactly make you think about throwing off the shackles of a totalitarian government. But when it comes to the tedium of your daily existence, there's certainly a comparison to make. Like Papers, Please, you're given a list of tasks to complete by the end of your shift. Usually this centers around how many tickets you'll be required to write. But throughout the day, you'll still be faced with a lot of decisions to make. Do you get cozy with either of the gangs that live and work on your beat? Do you take bribes from citizens in exchange for not towing their cars? Are you morally obligated to help a former male porn star make it back on top after a decade in the shadows living on an all-donut diet? These decisions rarely have easy answers, and I found out pretty early on that it's nearly impossible to play through the game without occasionally taking a bribe or doing a favor for the mob. It doesn't exactly paint a bright and rosy picture of the police force, but it's not like you get paid a ton of cash for what you're doing, and those weekly alimony payments you're saddled with stack up fast. Like Papers, Please, the tediousness of your daily life isn't exactly what I'd call balls-to-the-wall fun, but it's engaging as hell, and the different plot points that interrupt your day are usually just bonkers enough to keep you playing. There's a racial component to Beat Cop that I found a little disconcerting. Slurs get thrown around like confetti, and some of the characters have all the rich cultural nuance of a Rob Schneider performance. I'm not saying there's no room for the portrayal of racism in a video game, far from it. Lord knows New York in the 80s had plenty of issues with race. But then again, Pixel Crow said themselves that they weren't trying to portray the realities of New York. They wanted to make a tribute to cop shows in the 80s. And I must have watched different cop shows than they did. I never heard Magnum drop the N-bomb in his show. Hell, I never even heard it from Matlock. And you know he wanted to say it. Maybe I'm giving him too hard a time on this. I mean, there's a difference between portraying racism and actually being culturally insensitive, right? Of course. It's a diverse cast, after all, like this black gentleman right here, who appears to be eating a watermelon. God damn it, guys. Ultimately, the themes of Beat Cop left me a little chilly. Race relations aside, the humor in the game is largely delegated to the camp of a dime a dozen dick jokes, which is fine. Not every game needs to sound like it was written by Truman fucking Capote. Any humor that doesn't come from the Adam Sandler playbook tends to focus on the, hey look, it's the 80s strategy. Hey, Labyrinth is playing at the local movie theater. You guys remember Labyrinth, right? What? The name on this door buzzer says E. Spangler. That's a character from a movie I like. You get the idea. So theme and writing aside, I'd be a liar if I said I wasn't really involved in the gameplay itself. It's funny, theoretically the most boring part of the game becomes my favorite. It all comes down to time management, really. You've got to write out each ticket, and if you can get enough of them written, you get a bonus. All this while responding to calls of vandalism, robbery, and even the occasional bit of light terrorism. The gameplay is stressful at times, but genuinely fun and engaging. There was the occasional bug, and I found it annoying that the word bubbles of a random passerby could block my view to click on something, but I didn't notice anything that actually broke the game. Overall, it was fun. If you enjoy the real-life imitation of games like Papers, Please, or even the unforgiving nature of this war of mine, I think you'll enjoy Beat Cop. Just don't go into it hoping for something that's thematically deep. Like those 80s cop melodramas that it attempts to pay homage to, Beat Cop is a fun ride that maybe you shouldn't take too seriously. Oh, and don't take too many bribes, your chief will notice.
If Daddy don't sink a little drinky, Daddy gets sad and blue. Sneak a little drinky, sneakity-doo. Sneak a little drinky past you. Sneak a little drinky, sneakity-doo. Sneak a little drinky past you.